Good evening, anarchists everywhere. I'm Ian Bone and welcome to Anarchism in the UK. Today's guest is filmmaker and anarchist Greg Hall. Welcome, Greg.
Hello, thank you.
Okay, let's start off by talking about your feature film, The Plague. How did that come about?
I made my first feature film, The Plague. I was aged 22 and I shot it for just $3,500. I'd come fresh out of finishing film school. I was kind of quite depressed about going into the film industry. I'd spent so many years kind of being creative and getting quite politicised that I was really hungry just to make a film that kind of represented me and my friends and the way we grew up, and a lot of things I was into at the time, like hip-hop, and just the way we were living, like friends of mine having a credit card scam, people getting involved in things like dealing. I always felt like, where is our culture? Where is MTV or something like that? The British film industry doesn't show the way British kids are living. So really that was the main drive behind The Plague, and I worked with untrained actors and we shot it for 3 weeks on absolutely no money, no licenses. We kind of broke every law to do it. We edited it. My editor was homeless at the time, sleeping on my floor. We'd cobbled together bits of equipment and we kind of just borrowed, begged and stole anything we could really, and it ended up getting an award off Mike Leigh and picking up a few awards and doing all the festival circuit in Europe, then getting a British cinematic release and a DVD release, and it's got some really good reviews, so it really helped establish me at quite a young age as an independent filmmaker in Britain.
So how did you blag people to act for nothing then?
A lot of the young guys that I wrote the script with them in mind. I mean, I based a lot of the script on me and my friends, but the young kids in it kind of brought more of an authenticity, like from the estates that they were coming from. So they were just up for doing something. They were so creative and they hadn't really done much drama. My sister used to teach them, a lot of them, at South Thames College, but they were kind of hungry and didn't have any, they weren't up to anything else. They were all kind of unemployed, and so it was everyone just putting their energy into work on something collectively, because they felt also that, where is our story, where is our cinema?
Yeah. And did you adopt the Mike Leigh's way of doing it? Would you just tell him a plot and work around it, or was it all scripted?
No, The Plague was a lot more scripted. As I say, it was kind of based on stories of when I was growing up, and when I was coming to the end of art school, I was kind of really depressed and literally just spent a month writing it, and kind of that first draft, we then went away and improvised for 2 months around that. So there's a big level of improvisation, but there was a script in place.
And how did you then get it to be shown in all different places? I mean, that must have been pretty difficult.
Yeah, it was really, we were just promoting it. The one thing I say about The Plague is, it came out in 2004, it first premiered, and this was before films like Bullet Boy, Kidulthood, Adulthood. They've kind of, the industry has come to street culture and tried to make something about street culture, whereas The Plague, we came from the point of, we are street culture, the people we're working with. We promoted it through flyering it, things like Kung Fu, a lot of the hip-hop events that were going on, and we just pushed it on the net, really. And having a guy called Skinny Man involved with the film, and I shot his music video which tied in with the film. People have been a massive fan of him for about 15 years, so there's a lot of anticipation about his album. So all kind of tied in nicely, really. And then the Mike Leigh seeing it and giving it the Catherine Cartledge Awards, that it kind of opened it up to the kind of cinema fans, and they really started paying attention.
So how did Mike Leigh come to see it?
We had an industry screening. I was working in a collective back in university, and Mike's son Leo was in the collective, and we'd worked together a lot, and Leo shot it. And when we came to the industry screening, we thought, Leo's dad wanted to come down and see it anyway because he's proud of his son's work. And we thought, it'd be brilliant, the industry screening, Mike Leigh would be there, should impress like all these distributors and journalists. No one really came except Mike Leigh. And he then took me aside and said he wanted to show it to some other people.
And you said, no, Mike, certainly not.
Well, no, I kind of jumped at the opportunity, and he showed it to the other selectors of the Catherine Cartledge Foundation. So obviously his son was involved in it, and he wanted them to look at it, and a lot of them turned around to me, and Catherine was an actress who was in Naked and had died suddenly, and they created a foundation. Right. And some of the patrons are people like Lars von Trier, really big kind of European filmmakers, and people like Mike Leigh and Simon McBurney. and they all saw it and they said, this is the kind of thing Katrin would have loved. You went out and done it. It's political. It's no money. It's independent. And really, that's how the Katrin Cartledge and Mike Lee thing happened.
So what stops other people doing the same thing, going out and just filming like you did on a low budget? Because people want to make films, but often they're stopped by finance.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is actually knowing how to work on no money, knowing the language of cinema and how to use it, how to shoot and get the best things out of working on nothing. I mean, a lot of that comes down to the fact I started making films when I was about 14 on old VHS machines. I'd cobble together any equipment. So I was already starting to learn to just make things for nothing. And I think people just need to stop talking about making films and just make films. I hate people that come up to me and go, oh yeah, I want to make a film. Well, stop standing here in this bar telling me about making a film and make films. That's the most important thing.
So by the time how old were you when The Plague was finished?
It premiered, I was still 22, and
Right.
then it started picking up awards. I just turned 23, and that was the end of 2004. It kept doing festivals 2005, and then hit the cinemas end of 2006. I was 25 by the end of it, 22 when I started it.
And that led on to your next film was Kapital. Can you tell us a
Yeah,
bit
it kind
about
of all
that?
crossed over, really. I'd been trying to get another project, and I was approached by a guy called Alex Poots, who had been the selector at the English National Opera, and he'd just taken the job as director of the Manchester International Festival, which the big commission they had was the Monkey Opera by Damon Albarn. And the point of the festival was to commission artists, 10 artists, give them complete creative freedom. So I was co-commissioned with a composer called Steve Martland, and the idea was to work differently. So I had no script, I only had a 6-page outline. I'd taken fairy tales and just stripped them down and worked with actors in Manchester to make them contemporary. And Steve never saw the film, he wrote the score, and then I edited the film to his score. But the amazing thing about the festival was that it was kind of part of the wider gentrification of the city. I mean, you got like kind of Urban Splash and Bruntwood, those companies developing, kind of moving out the locals and putting all these loft apartments and wanting people from London to live there. And the festival was almost set up as part of the gentrification drive, really. So
when the filmmakers move in, the working class moves out.
Well, this was one of the things, this was one of the kind of responsibilities that I had to tackle, really. And I felt because I was given complete creative freedom, I think my film was one of the only pieces in the festival that actually said something about the gentrification and regeneration drive. And even in the film, there's a lovely graffiti that says "Big Brother is regenerating." But I got in a bit of trouble with all the festival people because it was funded by the city council and developers, but it was an opportunity that I had to take, really.
Yeah. So really your sort of politicisation over the last few years was going on at the same time as your filmmaking. How did you sort of first get into sort of radical politics?
Yeah, it's weird. It is very much hand in hand. I mean, my mum and dad, I really kind of take it back to them because my mum's from a very working class background from Fulham. Her mum and dad, you know, my nan was a real Cockney from the Bow Bells, and then granddad was from Fulham. So she was brought up with 3 sisters, toilet outside. My nan used to go clean the posh house in Sloane Square. A real kind of working class background. Then my dad his father was from Scotland and went to join the Palestine police at the only people that would take him at the age of 14, he kept getting sent back from the British Army, but they took him in the Palestine police. And he met my nan, they were Armenian refugees as part of the genocide. So my nan was born in Syria. I met my granddad, and my father was born there, then my mum and dad. So even that background of feeling like, am I British, am I not, but feeling that my mum's very kind of working class, that kind of authentic British lifestyle. So, and then my middle name was Leon because my dad was quite a bohemian in the 60s. So I've always felt the burden of being quite politicised. But I really think at school, I never fit in at school. I was always kind of the shortest kid and I read a lot. Always spent my time in the library, so I never really fitted in, and I think that's always festered in my mind, kind of anti-authoritarian beliefs, and never feeling that I fit in and that I shouldn't have to be made to fit in.
And how does the Armenian background sort of influence you, or how Armenian do you feel? Have you been back to Armenia at all?
We only went 2 years ago for my dad's 60th. It's the first time he'd ever been there. I mean, I'm not a nationalist person at all, but it's just an extra element of me that I'm very proud of being British, and I consider myself British. But there's that other element that I know